Hello, our truth warriors, and welcome back to the Atlantic Underground podcast. Today's guest has been so on track for the past decade that what he sees now is so important to comprehend. He is a contributor to the Trends Journal with Gerald Celente and has an incredible platform at traderschoice.net. With so much going on in the financial markets, I really couldn't think of a better time to have our friend Gregory Mannarino return and talk with us today. Hello, sir. How are you doing?
I am doing great. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Love your show. Love to be here.
Thank you. We're going to kick off probably one of the main things that people aren't aware of. Can you tell us initially how much cash is available to people in the US should they want to withdraw what they think they have?
A fraction of a fraction of a fraction. Absolutely. It wouldn't take too much. Really, see, here's the thing. What do we want to do? What do you, me, and I think probably 100% of the people that follow our work want to do? We want to bring down, I know I do, and like I said, I think I could speak for you and everybody else there, bring down this current system here. It's a curse upon the earth here. I wish that people would run to these institutions and start withdrawing their cash, because we could bring down the whole freaking system. Their Achilles here is this so-called fractional reserve, which is really a zero reserve system now. So absolutely, we could bankrupt this whole thing in a day. If people just went out to these institutions and tried to pull out some of their cash, what would they do? They would obviously not allow people to have access to it, which would really start the ball rolling here. But we got to bring the system down here. Okay, this is the worst thing I think on the face of the earth that's going on right now. We're watching the whole thing come apart. It's an illiquid system. They're trying to pump it full of cash here. It's drying up, and look at the end result here. The Federal Reserve is unbelievable. I want people to put this into perspective. So they've been involved in this so-called quantitative tightening, unwinding the balance sheet. Well, let's see, they almost reversed the entire thing. For 5 months, they've been doing this. They almost reversed it all in about 2.5 weeks. We're almost at a new peak with regard to the Federal Reserve's public balance sheet. But absolutely, we could win. We could all win right now if we all went to the bank and withdrew cash. If we just withdrew, I don't know, even small sums, all of us, every single one of us, we could take down the system. But people won't do it. You can say it, but people aren't going to do it. Maybe people that follow our work would do it. But in aggregate, look, people just, what do they want to do? They want to get up, they want to go to work, they want to get a paycheck, and they want to go about their lives because they think everything is just fine. And but it's not fine, as we clearly know.
Yeah. And is it true that there's only cash-wise, only 10% available of what people think exist, which means if people did go to the bank to withdraw the money, it wouldn't be there for 90% of the people?
That's exactly true. For 90% of the people, it would not be there. And I think this is something that people aren't allowed to know. We're guaranteeing deposits. That's what they're talking about right now. It can't happen. Can't happen. There's not enough cash that exists on the planet Earth. There is less than $2 trillion in actual printed cash that's ever been made. 2 trillion. That's it. The rest of it is in fantasy land. It's not on the elemental chart. So it's a fascinating thing to ponder. But that's, it's amazing that you brought that up, because that's the key to the system. That's how we could take it down. If we really wanted to make a difference, all we would have to do, all of us, is just start pulling our cash out of these institutions. But look what they did. They set up this whole banking crisis here. They're allowing these smaller institutions to go under one way or the other. They're going to merge. They're using a term here, integrate, but what they really can't say is consolidate. They're using integrate. It's astonishing how they play on words. They're integrating the system. If they said consolidating, it would maybe set a light bulb off in people's heads, but that's exactly what they're doing here. See, it's no secret, I think, to anyone that follows at least our work here, that for eight months ago, I started to tell people, titles of my video, "The Banking System is in Trouble." Look at my videos from about 8 months ago, explaining no deposits, no loans, no deals. There's a problem here. And I was saying more specifically that it's we the people that are in trouble here, not these banks. So look what they're doing now. All those deposits that got pulled out of these smaller institutions are now going into the big mega banks here. And how did they sell this to the public? Oh, yeah, it's a rescue for First Republic. It's a rescue. $30 billion. It's a rescue. No, all this is to cover withdrawals. And then that didn't work. So then they need some other kind of a deal to be made here. But that's what they're doing here, is they're trying to figure out a way, and they already have it all planned out, how they can consolidate. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Integrate the system into fewer institutions that will just have more power. It's just so crazy.
Yeah. So there you go, people. If you've got money in the bank and you're not one of the 10% that's going to be able to get it first, you're going to lose out. And that leads me to something that was enacted all around the world in all the banks back in 2013. And that was the enactment of the bail-in system. Now, the bail-in system allows the banks in another scenario of the crash system to not rely upon a bailout anymore from the government like they did in 2008, but actually go in and remove the money from the depositors' bank accounts and use that money to shore up the bank to make sure it doesn't fail. But inevitably, when we get to that stage anyway, it's probably too late. And it's just going to be a grand theft of people's money that they're not going to get back. Do you think that's a very possible scenario because of what's been enacted and held in law now for 10 years, with the majority of the people not even knowing this exists?
Oh, absolutely. But it gets even worse than that. What people don't understand is these institutions, okay, when you take out a loan from one of these major institutions, that loan can be called back at any time. Nobody reads the fine print. Not only will deposits be taken, when people put their deposits into one of these institutions, the money really is no longer theirs. It really becomes property of the institution or the bank in this case here, and they can do what they want with it. That's also part of the fine print that nobody reads. Now, that's absolutely can be done. Then I think maybe the bigger issue is that if an institution is failing here, again, no one reads the fine print. These loans can be called back, which means if you can't provide whatever it is, if you can't pay that thing off at that moment, they'll come after your assets. So this is what they're going to do as well in a worst case scenario. And I would not put anything behind them, above them. These institutions, they're criminal organizations, all of them. And I wish we really could bring these things down. So, but it always comes down to, look, no one pays any attention to this stuff. They sign on the dotted line. They realize that there's all this minuscule pages and pages of fine print. They don't read it. No one reads any of it. If people were to take just, I don't know, 10 minutes, they would go, hold on a minute here. You mean you can keep my money? Oh, you mean you can call my loan? You mean you can come after my assets? I mean, what about all this? And yeah, well, I'm sorry, sir or ma'am. Yes, that's absolutely true. That's the way it goes. And if you don't like it, go stash your cash under your mattress. What people really should do, like they used to do in the old days. Why do we need these institutions? I mean, I understand we got to pay our bills. We got to, you got to funnel this through these kind of an institutions, but only I've been telling people to get their money out of these banks for I don't know how freaking long, years. Yeah. Only keep what you have to in these institutions, because they're going to come after your deposits, that are going to come after your loans, they're going to come after your assets, whatever they want, and you have no recourse, period. It really is that bad, and people don't get it. They don't know because they don't read the fine print.
That's it. And obviously the World Economic Forum have this great reset plan of where people will own nothing and like it. Is this likely tied into the fact that they can call in these assets and take people's homes and property and anything they own in the scenario of the collapse? And is it likely that that's going to be done deliberately to trigger this, so the bigger corporations, the BlackRocks and people like that, can absorb all the properties that people have mortgages on?
At fire sale prices. That's what they did. If you look at history here. What did they do during the whole mortgage-backed securities debacle here, which really wasn't too long ago? They went after people's homes. They threw people out into the street. They had nowhere to go. And they got these homes at that time for next to nothing. And now look what they've done. They took people's property. Then the central banks, none more so than the Fed, in my view, has propped up this housing bubble that we're in right now, and these home values have went to the moon. I mean, right now we're seeing home prices fall a little bit here. But it's not getting anybody really rattled yet. But absolutely, look, they're going to come after whatever they want to. Okay, we're nothing. We are a means to an end. This is a consolidation of the entire system, a movement of power into the few. And look, what have I been telling people for, I don't know, 10 years? We're moving back to a feudal system, a new two-tier society, extreme haves, extreme not, saying you will be happy with whatever they give you, the crumbs. What are they doing? They're deliberately making people dependent on the system. I've been warning about this for I don't know how long. Dependency. Create dependency on the current system. So they will not get a backlash why people won't go running to the bank to shut down the system here. I mean, this is what we really should do, but they've really crafted this to such a genius level here. I mean, it's a long drawn out process. And what we're seeing, people think that we're living in some kind of real-time scenario, and we're not. We're living in a side effect of what these central planners, that's really what they should be called. They shouldn't be called central banks. They should be called central planners, because they run the economy, they run the markets, they run the world financial system, but this has all been thought out and planned out. We're living like a decade or longer in the side effect of what they've already put into effect from, it's more than likely multiple decades. They have it all planned out, how they're going to consolidate the system, their new system, which is going to come 100% digital, as we all know, fiat. And it's all about control. It's like, it sounds like a science fiction movie, but it's real. And people can see this stuff unfolding right before their eyes.
Your favorite and my favorite, how important is it for people to hold silver? And what other asset classes are there that we should own?
It's my favorite of all time. I love it. I play with it. I just, you know what, people, I constantly say this. Why, Greg? Why, Greg? Because I just look at three things. I look at the Dow gold ratio, gold silver ratio, and I tell people to do this all the time. Look, this stock market is so out of touch with reality that, for example, look at Micron. Micron reported earnings last night after the bell. Their biggest miss ever in history with regard to earnings, and their stock was up like 4%. Okay, it doesn't make sense anymore. The market is so twisted and distorted. There's no price discovery mechanism anymore at all. And how can there be when you have, in just the last 2.5 weeks, the Fed pumping almost $500 billion into the system? It can't happen. So understanding that, and that the stock market seems to defy gravity, no matter how bad the economy is. They can shut down the economy. I got in a lot of trouble a while back when COVID came out. I did a video, get long COVID. In other words, buy the market. People thought I was crazy. They're like, Greg, what do you mean buy the market? The market's going to crash. I said, I don't think so. I think they're going to pump this thing, and the market actually went higher. And I wasn't telling people to capitalize on people getting ill from COVID or whatever. I just thought that they were going to prop this up as they destroyed the economy to kill the small businesses to fulfill the corporate agenda. And I think I nailed that one. Honestly, it was one of the best calls I've ever made. Unfortunately, it did play out. Unfortunately, it played out to be correct.
Yeah.
And it's so crazy the way things are. You got, like, when you think one thing, you got to say, hold on a minute. It's probably the polar opposite that what you think is going to happen. And it does, because it's just so crazy and propped up. And, it's a house of cards, I've been telling people, built over a pool of gasoline. There's no doubt about it. It's going to get very real. But again, everyone's looking, hey, where's the crash? Where's the this? Where's the that? It's going to start in the debt market. But looking at silver, as we were going, before I went off on this tangent here, looking at the Dow gold ratio, gold silver ratio, I sincerely believe what I'm about to say, and I've been saying this for years, and I want people to listen to what I'm saying, because if it doesn't play out this way, I really won't believe it. We don't know where the bottom is here with regard to the market. Nobody has any idea where it actually is. Here in the United States, the Fed jumped in at Dow 6,000 with quantitative easing 1. Obviously, they're doing quantitative easing now. That's 500 billion almost pumped into the market. And no more quantitative tightening. They're back to quantitative easing, but you can't call it that. But that's what it is. Anyway, so where the bottom is, no one knows. We are going to find out where the bottom is eventually. But the crash, the real crash that we got, let's see, Michael Burry talking about, Jim Rickards talking about, at least 4 Wall Street banks. And then we got an ex-vice president of Lehman Brothers today saying that this market's going to crash too. But the key here is it's not going to begin or end, again, in the stock market. It's going to begin and end in the debt market because the debt market is the driver. The stock market in aggregate and all the companies in it are derivatives of what's happening in the debt market. That's the driver. Now, understanding that, that's where I look all the time. What's the debt market doing? What's the 10-year yield doing? What are they doing? They're keeping it very stable. But going back again to the market bottoms, we don't know where it is. I'm going to say it's probably close to 6,000 or lower. We are going to get there again at one point. Let's just say we bottom out in a full-on meltdown in the debt market, which will cause rates to spike in an uncontrolled fashion. You've got a meltdown in the global equity markets here. Stocks will plummet as rates spike in an uncontrolled fashion. This is going to be by design. This is not going to be by accident, of course. And wherever the Dow bottoms out, let's say we bottom at 6,000. I think gold is going to be equal. So gold 6,000, Dow 6,000. That's what I think it's going to be. And it could be lower. It could be Dow 4,000. It could be 3. Whatever it might be, we're going to get, at least in my view, a 1-to-1. It could be 2-to-1 favoring gold. And I think we can get a 10-to-1 with regard to gold, silver. So, I mean, just do the math here. If we get Dow 6,000, gold 6,000, what are we talking about? $600 for silver. It's pretty. But look, I'm telling people my best estimate of what can happen in a full-on meltdown here. And I also, what have I been telling people for a while now? And I got backed up by Jim Rogers on this. Jim Rogers came out, I think, just a couple of days ago saying people need exposure to commodities. I've been telling people this right now freaking long, that people, again, think of how this is going to work. It's just so simple, at least to me, to understand. Cash, again, doesn't grow little money wings and fly away when markets crash, okay? It just moves. It moves from one set of assets into another set of assets. And in my view, a meltdown in the debt market, again, will crush the stock market, just as the opposite of what central banks have been doing here by keeping rates suppressed. So opposite happens, you get cash bleeding out of the debt market, cash bleeding out of the stock market. It's just going to move. It's going to go into commodities. It's going to go into suppressed assets. And I think none more so than these things here. But I also think things like crude oil, natural gas, anything, all that stuff, because it's real. It's real stuff that you can touch. And I also think it's going to go into cryptocurrencies as well. I think some of the big cryptos are going to benefit immensely from this kind, because cash is just going to seek places to go. And I think that's one place where it's going to go, as well as this whole thing just kind of comes apart. That's just my take on it. And I want people to think about what I'm saying. Don't take I'm not saying this is gospel truth here. I'm saying this is what I believe, based on my study of the entire system, which is all I do pretty much. So, but like I said, people, do your own research, think about what I'm saying, and understand that cash doesn't just fly away. It doesn't go away to money heaven. It's going to move. And I think people need exposure to commodities, especially gold and silver here. In my free newsletter, it's 100% free. I put out at least 2 newsletters there with suggestions of several exchange traded funds, and I broke them all down. This is what they cover, and people need to do their own research on these things as well. But this is how I see it playing out here, at least at this point. I have not told anyone to short this market. I have not even told anyone to get out, even though we have the Mannarino market risk indicator, which is also free to everybody, right on my website, TradeStraits.net. That's sitting at a high risk level here. Look at what they're doing. They won't allow the thing to come down yet. They're not done. I've been telling people they're not done for I don't know how freaking long. Oh, Greg, you're wrong. It's coming down tomorrow. This guy says it's coming down next week. I mean, we got crash callers, crawling out of the freaking woodwork here, and they've all been wrong. They're going to get it right. There is no doubt in my mind that this market is going to crash, and it's going to be a crash of the highest magnitude you can possibly believe. But again, it's going to start and end in the debt market, not in the stock market.
Yeah. Federal Reserve Did they just increase their balance sheet by 400 billion 2 days prior to the Silicon Valley Bank being notified as crashing?
They started pumping cash 2 days prior to Silicon Valley Bank. Absolutely. I don't know the exact amount, but they started. You can look at it. I mean, it's an incredible thing. Let's talk about that just a little bit here. So we have this congressional blame game going on right now. Okay, of course, the Federal Reserve, they must remain absolutely blameless. But what came out in the testimony recently was the Federal Reserve knew, they admitted on international television that they realized that there was a problem with Silicon Valley Bank in last November. Last November, the Fed knew, yet they did nothing. They did nothing. The regulators turned their heads again. Why? Because this had to happen. They needed these events to occur. Absolutely. Look at the Fed's balance sheet. On the 8th, we started seeing bang, 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 bang. The Fed started pumping. They started reversing quantitative tightening, and they went to quantitative easing. So they knew it. Look, the truth is always out there. People just got to know where to look for it and where to listen. I can't understand in how what the stunning admission, in my view, that the Fed knew that there was a problem back in November, but did nothing. Why is it that this isn't getting broadcast everywhere? Thank you for bringing this up here. It should be across the freaking headlines of every newspaper in the free world, or even in the communist world, or not so free world, or whatever. But I mean, I don't even know what we have here anymore in the United States, a yet to be defined system where the news is curtailed and obviously censored. But it's an astonishing thing to see these things, stunning admissions, and no, it's the management's fault. It's the management's fault. What about the regulators? What about the regulators? They didn't see it, really. They want us to believe the regulators missed this. The Fed had missed it, although they didn't. We found out that they knew it. The Treasury missed this and everything else. Absolutely not. This is it's a fable, and they're trying to sell another tale to the people, like as they always do.
Crazy. Now, we are clearly heading towards the monetary system's goal of having a digital currency. How dangerous is this as a control mechanism, and how can it be stopped?
It is, in my view, it is wretched. Okay. Right now, we have a system that is almost completely digital, but they want absolute control. They want to know what you're doing, when you're doing it, down to the thousandth of a cent. They're going to be able to track everything. Again, it's another way that they can circumvent our freedoms and our liberties. See, we have nothing anymore. And the scary thing to me is there are so many people, again, who have been made dependent on the system that will willingly accept what they're given in any form. You know, you'll eat bugs and you'll be happy about it. I mean, it's an incredible thing. They've created a slave society, a slave planet. And there aren't many people like you and me and the people that follow our work. I mean, I'm hoping we're getting the message out there. We're trying, you and I and the people that follow our work. I believe they're out here. They're talking about this stuff. They're trying to make people aware of what's happening, but it's not enough, and it's not happening fast enough, unfortunately, because most people, they're brainwashed. They walk around through time and space not knowing who they are, what they're doing, why they're doing it. They're like drones. They literally have become like drones. They just wander around, not understanding what's happening to them. And how would they, if these people are following, let's say, the mainstream propaganda, how are they going to know the truth at all? They're not going to. They're going to be, all these people, they sit there and they read a script. You and me, we're going at this like this. This is, right off the top of our heads here. Imagine if they tried to do this to, I don't know, any one of the mainstream commentators, they'd be like, what am I supposed to say? And it just drives me crazy. But this is what they do. And I believe what I'm about to tell you. I sincerely believe that the flow of information, or the availability of information, is also controlled by central banks. Everything is controlled by them. They control the money. They control everything. All this is a sideshow. Everything else is nonsense.
Absolutely. Speaking of sideshows, then, Russia and China. I mean, we have the rumblings now of conflict escalation. And as Gerald always says, when all else fails, they take you to war. Do you really think it's going to get to the stage where this will become a hot war, or is this just all part of the theater that they play out for people to live in fear?
Well, it's multifactorial. People definitely, they want people living in fear. Fear is the biggest control mechanism that has ever been utilized against an unsuspecting public since time began. This is how the few have controlled the many, unfortunately. But I believe how this is going to play out, and I've been telling people this for the longest time. I believe sincerely that we're already in the early stages of World War III. They're going to blame everything on the war. This is going to escalate. Of course, it's going to be it just happened to be this way. This event happened to occur. We have to retaliate. But they're keeping it in their back pocket. It's boiling right now. It's brewing over there, and they want people to be aware of it, but not overly aware of it just yet here. So when eventually, it's always the same story. This is how we know how it's going to play out. It's always the same. Look what they're doing right now. For example, the blame game in Congress with the management. They're going to point at the war. The reason why you're seeing inflation skyrocket more so because the Fed and central banks, they really are trying. They're raising rates. All they're doing is cutting the availability of credit to the smaller institutions like these banks who are now failing and the small businesses around the world. That's what they're doing, but you're not supposed to know that. People are supposed to think they're really in the fight of their lives. But when we start to see all these hundreds of billions that are now being pumped into the system again, and it's going to be in the trillions because we are now back on quantitative easing. No one can know that. Again, what is it called when the Fed unwinds its balance sheet? That's quantitative tightening. But when the balance sheet shoots up, well, then that's not called quantitative easing. It's some other thing. It's an incredible situation, but that's what they're going to do. They're going to find an event, and I think more than likely the best scapegoat here is going to be the war that's expanding. It's the war's fault. That's why we're having a failing economy. It's the war's fault. This is why we're seeing skyrocketing inflation. It's not the Federal Reserve. They're trying, or other central banks. It's always the same thing. It's a blame game. So they already have the scapegoat. They're letting it dwell. Like I said, they're letting it fester. They want people to be aware of it, but not overly aware just yet. They're just keeping it in their back pocket for when they need it. And it unfortunately, in my view, it's going to get a lot worse. There's going to be some other kind of event here, and I've been telling people to look out for it. Another false flag or a black swan. Of course, it's going to be, no one saw this one coming except you and I, because we're talking about it right now. It's going to come. And unfortunately, thousands of people are going to die. It's going to be really big, like a 9/11 or a bigger thing. So they can, again, get people to rah, 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 and put their flags out. And we need to do this for God and country. We need to kill tens of thousands of people for God and country. Oh, absolutely. That's what we need to do, because that's what they always do.
Yeah. And a lot of wars now, I mean, they're not actually fought hand-to-hand combat. It's very much a financial or trade war. Now, with many countries now signaling that they want to join the BRICS nations, especially the likes of Saudi Arabia and Mexico, would this be the end of the US dollar if this happens?
Well, I'll tell you this, it's going to bring us to war, a bigger, wider war. Look, the Federal Reserve, they have, what people don't understand is the U.S. military is mandated to protect the petrodollar and keeping the U.S. dollar as the world reserve. And if in fact, see, look, right now with this whole BRICS thing here, they got a basket of currencies that they're transacting in, and it's a nice idea. Is it going to go anywhere? I think it depends, but the biggest issue here is I don't believe they'll have to, how it will play out, unfortunately, is going to be, again, pointing over and looking at this war here. If they need to foster or another major world war to prevent the BRICS system from catching on, they'll do it. It's always the same story. If you look back on history, it's always the same. People don't have to really ponder and think, well, hold on a minute, is it different this time? Look for the same reasons why they have fought other wars here. The supposed war against communism, the Vietnam War. It's all for the same goal here, to allow central banks to issue their product, which is just fiat. And the Fed will do whatever they have to do here, point the weapon, which is the United States military, its full arsenal, including its nuclear arsenal, at anybody, inward or outward, just to maintain their power. So is it a threat? I think it maybe is a threat to a certain degree. But and I'm not saying that it won't work. I mean, Russia, China, if they got a couple of, all fighting the United States over this, but of course they're going to spin it some other way. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I know a lot of people are looking for the BRICS system here as some kind of a saving grace, and unfortunately, a lot of people have to die first. Will it work? We'll have to see how many people die, and then we'll see.
That's it. Will we see hyperinflation as they continue hiking the rates and devaluing the buying power of people? Or will this happen when rates actually drop?
I think we're going to see, I think with regard to the raising rates, I believe central banks are just about done here. They never meant to. This was never, ever, ever, ever since day one. And I talked about this on my blog since day one, meant to slow inflation down here. All they're trying to do is kill the economy by crushing the consumer. That's what they're making credit less available. And in doing so, they're exacerbating the real underlying problem. The real underlying problem is liquidity. The system, it's drying up. And I've been telling people this for years. It's an illiquid system. And it's going to rear its ugly head at one particular time here in a meltdown, which will occur in the debt market here. And with what central banks are doing now, with the Fed more specifically by now quantitative easing to the highest order, I mean 2.5 weeks, almost $500 billion. We're gonna pay for that, but it's gonna be this is nothing. This is nothing. It's gonna be much, much more. And again, it's a big lag effect. What people have to understand is once cash is added to the system in whatever form, digital, printed, whatever, it takes a while for it to work its way through the global economy. But again, once it's like a missile being launched. Okay, once the missile is launched, it may take X amount of time to hit its target. We are the target. We, the people of the world, are the target. Central banks, again, what people again don't know is a central bank, their one power, their ultimate power is their ability to inflate, to create cash out of nothing, to balloon the money. I have a chart here. Let me see if I can find this. Hold on a minute. Look at this. Look at this chart. This is from today. That's from today. This is the Federal Reserve balance sheet just in the last 2.5 weeks. That's it's almost $500 billion. 5 months here of quantitative tightening is completely erased, and then some. It's unbelievable. We're going to surpass. We're going to go way past the Fed's. This is the public balance sheet. Okay, the Federal Reserve and most large corporations have two balance sheets: the public one, the one you're allowed to see, you and me, and the other one that no one is allowed to see, just the big wigs or the very high ups at these corporations. That's the stuff that they do kind of, maybe that's not exactly right. So that's the off balance sheet stuff. And the Fed, and I've made people aware of this for I don't know how many years, they've been funneling dollars around the world to central banks around the world who are using dollars to buy assets. I mean, this is no surprise. What did we find out like 2 weeks ago? That these central banks are involved in currency swaps, euros to the Fed, Fed sending dollars and Fed sending them everywhere. But this is a phenomenon. The Fed has been dollarizing the world secretly in greater and greater amounts for a very, very long time. But you see, you wouldn't know that. You wouldn't see that on that balance sheet. This is all off balance sheet stuff. But anyway, yes, I think their main goal, they're going to inflate. That's how they keep their power. They're going to continue to inflate, unfortunately. And again, they're going to use the war as a scapegoat. It's the war's fault. It's this fault. It's that fault. It's whatever, global warming's fault. Whatever they want to make up at the particular time, that's the fault. This is why we have to borrow more cash into now, because we have to fund this. We have to fund the war. We have to fund whatever they want to throw at us here. And I've been telling people for the longest time, they're going to come up with stuff that you can't even dream about, think about, fantasize about, just to keep this model going, the debt-based model, which is a curse upon the earth. I know there's a lot of people hoping that the BRICS system is going to be gold back, which is, I think it was floated out there a while back. There's central banks over there won't allow it either, because if they had a gold back or a commodity back system, what would it do? It would restrain spending. Yeah. And no government wants to restrain spending. They want to spend and spend and spend to make people dependent on the system. And it's not going to be any different. Whatever the fancy name, whether it's bricks or hicks or flicks or shits, whatever they want to give to the system, it ain't going to make a difference. That's how central banks keep their power, by issuing debt. That's their only product. It's crazy.
Yeah. Now, I thought that Credit Suisse could have been the straw that actually broke the camel's back, but
Yeah, but
it
see what they're doing
appears
over there.
again.
Yeah.
But I mean, if it's not them that triggers this, where do you think it will stem from?
Look, it's clear to me that they are not going to allow the banking system itself it's collapsing. That's for sure. And they're just going to integrate it. We can't say consolidate. Let's use their words. Integrate. They're going to integrate the system. They're going to pump cash. Look what they're doing. Central banks, none more so than the Fed here, they're all going to do this. They're going to pump the system here to keep it propped up while deals are being made. Again, the assets of these institutions are going to be sold at massive discounts, fire sales. I started telling people this before it even started happening. I told people that was going to happen, and it is happening. I mean, look, all you got to do is say, okay, look at what's going on. Why? Why is this happening? Why is it? This what made me laugh. When this whole thing got kicked off, and they were talking about, well, hold on a minute. We need a buyer for XYZ bank. Why is it that none of the Wall Street banks or one of the big banks are stepping up to buy that bank to save it? Because they don't want to save it. They want to wait till the bank craters, and then they want to buy those assets for nothing. And that's exactly what's happening here. It's an incredible situation. And then people look around and say, what happened? Really? Who saw that coming? How about we did? All of us here, because we have a functioning brain. Imagine my shock here. But that's how it's going to play out, unfortunately. But with Credit Suisse or any of these institutions, they're just going to integrate them, and they're going to call it all good while these central banks pump the system. There's no way, and I've been telling people this for how many years, when you can see something, for example, if you're aware that a major institution is let's just throw something out here. Let's say we find out tomorrow that JP Morgan, the super bank of Wall Street, is going to collapse. Because we can see it, because we're pointing at it, that's how we know it's not the thing that's going to bring down the system. It's where we're not looking. That's how they operate. It's always some event way out of left field that no one saw coming. When we can point at something, when we can, like, whatever it might be, Credit Suisse or JP Morgan in the abstract or whatever it might be, it's not that. It's always something else. And they find a way to do it in a way that really does get everyone. Like, I have no way to tell what it's going to be. I wish I knew what it was. I think it's going to end up being a false flag. And what I started telling people at the end of last year, when this market was acting very erratic, I said, they're not done. They're not done pumping the system. Oh, Greg, you're wrong. So-and-so said this market's going to crash next week. Oh, the same guy has been telling you every freaking month now for 5 years. Oh, okay, you listen to him or her. No, again, because I'm just looking at the debt market, and it's just, and even this month here, at the beginning of this month, it's been pretty bad for the market. Go look at my videos. At the end of last month, I said this month was going to be very, very wild for the stock market. I think that's played out. Did I know at that point we were going to have this banking crisis? No. But just look, history tells us a lot. If you look at particular months of the market, this being one, and we're almost through it here, it's a volatile month. It's a month, and that, again, look, for all we know, we could watch this debt market meltdown start to happen tomorrow, and we can see this in real time by watching. I look at the benchmark, which is the US 10-year yield. I really don't even care about the rest of the yield curve. I know everyone's talking about the 2 to 10 inversion and the whatever. I don't even care about it. I mean, it's lovely to see, and it's fun to look at. But what does it really tell us that we don't know? When you have a yield curve that's inverted, in other words, when a 2-year yield is higher than a 10, which is upside down, well, historically, this tells us that the economy is just over. Looking forward, it means generally you go into recession, depression, something yet to be defined. So that I don't even care. I don't even care. I look at the 10-year yield, and I look at something else. I look at the relative strength of the dollar. These two things can really give people a clue as to where things are going here. Years ago, maybe 2 years ago, I started to tell people, watch what's going to happen to the relative strength of the dollar. Comparatively, it's going to go higher and higher and higher and higher. And it has done that because the dollar, again, still remains the prettiest bell at the bull. But on an absolute basis, I want people to know what's happening to them, and I hope they get it, is you have central banks collectively who are destroying the purchasing power of their currencies. it's like a race to the bottom. Who can do it first? But I think they're doing it. These central banks, you remember what Jay Powell said? He was like, oh, us central bankers, we talk all the time, but we don't coordinate. And then he admitted not this FOMC meeting, the one before that they do coordinate. I mean, duh. So what they're doing here, these central banks, is they're pumping the system. Obviously, the Fed's gone on a binge here just in the past couple of weeks to dilute the currency, to suck its purchasing power out, and that's what we're seeing. You know, most people have no idea about inflation. It's a money supply problem at its root, and since we've had central banks on a binge since the last meltdown to reprop up the system here, again, we had that lag effect. It took this long to start seeing inflation move higher. And you know, with this new cash that's being pumped into the system, it may not take as long because the ball's already rolling. So we'll see. Everything is going exactly according to how these central banks have planned it out, and we're just living in the side effect of it, unfortunately. But we can stay ahead of the curve by watching dynamics play out. We can say, okay, these are the most likely, or this is the most likely situation, how it's going to unfold. It's really not hard. If we understand who our enemy is, enemies are the central banks, what their goals are to be the lenders and buyers of last resort, to institute a completely new digital fiat system, and if they have to, exacerbate another major world conflict so they can point their finger at it. Say, that's the reason. Oh, it's not us. Oh, no. We were trying to save the economy. We were trying to raise rates. We were trying to control inflation. But you see, the war got really big. So that's why we have inflation now. And that's why the economy is a free fall. That's what they're going to do. We know what they're going to do. It's so obvious.
Do you think the governments will try and be the savior in a problem reaction solution scenario by offering a universal basic income to those that will lose everything and therefore having greater control over humanity?
Of course. It's exactly what they're going to do. Hey, everyone, guess what? You know, we have a real problem. And I know how many of you out here are suffering, and we're going to do something about it. Here's the problem. Wait for the reaction. And guess what? We have a solution for you. They always do. It's the same thing over and over and over and over and over throughout time. So of course that's what they're going to do, and that's why right now they are really desperate to create dependency. They are going out of their way to create dependency on the system so people won't revolt against it. And I've been telling people, I don't know, for a long time, we need a revolution, we need a revolt. But unfortunately, we're not going to get it because there are too many people dependent on the system. They've really played this well. They have played it well.
Yeah. Now I want to share this. If it can you see that there?
Yes, I can see it. It's beautiful.
Yeah. So this is the US debt clock. And if people see that, it certainly shows that a major problem. Now, what I wanted to ask is on the right-hand side of this, I know. We have the dollar to oil ratio, the dollar to silver ratio, and the dollar to gold ratio. They're all showing $0. Is that for any particular reason that you're aware of?
You know, not really. I don't know the reason why, but people have brought this to my attention over and over and over again. I don't care what they say here. Look, what are they talking about? They're talking about commodities. They're talking about real assets. They don't want you in these things. I understand that crude oil has had quite a wild ride as of late here, but in my view, it's going much, much higher. You know, I've been telling people that for the longest time. I never said it wasn't going to have a pullback. We did have a pretty substantial pullback, but pullbacks in this kind of environment, all of them should be bought, in my view. Again, do your own research and think about why I'm saying this, but commodities are real. When you see crude drop to $59, $60 a barrel, first of all, it has no business being here anyway, but this is the reality. The reality has become real, and it's going to get extremely more real as this whole thing really comes down. But it's interesting how they just the commodities on there, you know. But again, people, they don't want people in anything that's real. They want you in a digital fiat system. They don't want you transacting outside of their system. Why they feel like crypto is such a threat to them.
Yeah.
You know, but it's so sick. It really is so freaking twisted. Anyway, that's my take on it.
Yeah, and the one thing that I'll point out, and if people want to go to the US debtclock.org to take a look at this. The bottom right-hand corner actually shows liability per citizen, and that is at $545,183. This is what every citizen of the United States currently is saddled with as debt. For
a newborn baby, the minute it takes its first breath, owes that much.
Over half a
thing.
$1 million. It's absolutely mind-blowing. And surely that cannot continue. As you say, the debt market and debt itself is so
it's imploding.
bad.
It's imploding now. And that's what we're seeing, actions that we're seeing like right now. They're desperate to prop it up until the deals can be made. They got to integrate. I'm sorry, consolidate. No, it's integrate the system first. And then as they prepare the rollout for the new system, Jim Rickards, who's a guy I like Jim Rickards. He's a pretty smart guy. He's saying that we're going to get a crash middle of the year. Maybe it will correlate with that. I mean, Burry said we were going to have an imminent crash. I think it was a month ago or 6 weeks ago. And Rickards, look, that didn't play out to be correct. I think Burry is a little early. He's always been early. It's going to happen. And with regard to Rickards, maybe his timing will be on. But the one thing I despise, and people ask me all the time, hey, Greg, when? I don't know when. I don't know. And I have no idea. All I know is I know where to look to see when it's going to happen. Again, that's looking at the debt market, looking more specifically at the 10-year yield here in the United States, because it is the benchmark. So when that thing gets out of shape, and again, this is why I created the MMRI, the Mannarino Market Risk Indicator, which I think when the MMRI first came out, it was like at 80. Now it's maybe even less than that. And now it's 230 or something like that. We broke 300 at one point. 250 seemed to be the first red line in the sand. We hit that. All of a sudden, we started seeing debt get bought up again. Look, if you pay attention to these things, you could gain a lot of information. And that's what I do. I tell people all the time, raise your awareness. Just raise your awareness to what's going on around you. Pay attention to these little silly things, and things will become more clear to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So people can grasp what is going on and how things have progressed. How does what we are facing compare to the crash of 2008, in which you were in the thick of it as well?
Oh, there's nothing that comes close. Nothing in the remote comes close to what we're about to see. It's monumentally, exponentially worse. I've been telling people that when this thing gets real, we've never seen anything like this since. Let's just put this into perspective real quick. Since that meltdown here, central banks collectively have pumped trillions upon trillions upon trillions upon trillions of dollars into the system here, exacerbating the underlying issue, which is a world that it's an interesting paradox. I want people to think about what I'm saying. We have a world here that is awash in debt. Meanwhile, no matter how much it is, it's not enough. The system constantly, relentlessly, every minute of every day that passes, every second, must be fueled with more debt. It's the nature of the beast. We have a debt-based economic model. It's not wealth-based. And that debt must constantly and relentlessly be exponentially added on. So no matter whatever they're doing to pump into the system and prop it up, it's not enough. Now, in fact, I covered this recently in maybe it was yesterday or the day before the video I did. I said, this is like what they're doing now with this nearly 500 billion that the Fed's pumped into the system that we're allowed to know about. And will be much more. It's like a Band-Aid. It's a tiny little Band-Aid over like a tremendous leak coming out of like the Hoover Dam. And they can't fix it. It can't be fixed, nor do they want to. You see, that's the thing. People think central banks want to fix this. In no way do they want to fix this. They want the current system gone so they can issue their new system in. Okay, more control. What is it all about? Control, control, control. Dependency on the system. Control, dependency, control. That's all it is. Yeah. What I've said to this exact question is you could take every single meltdown that we've ever had and then pile that on top of each other and multiply it by an exponent, pick one, and that's probably, you're probably in the ballpark. But there's nothing like this before. We've never been here where we are today, where there's no price discovery in the market. It's in la land. It's distorted. It's twisted. It doesn't make sense anymore at all. You can look at fundamental factors, PE ratios, forward guidance, earnings. It don't matter anymore. Like I just said, Micron, the biggest earnings miss in their history, and the stock went higher by 4% or more than that. It just nothing makes sense anymore.
Nothing
It
makes
used
sense.
to be these are the rules. Okay, you look at a company's balance sheet, the one you're allowed to see. You look at what their PE ratio is. You look at what they're saying with regard to forward guidances. All this stuff that used to matter, it doesn't matter anymore at all. It's just like it just got thrown out. And people sit, and I sit here and I flip through the channels all day. I flip through CNBC, more specifically CNBC, Bloomberg, Fox Business, Yahoo Finance. I kind of flip through them all day long. I look at what's going on. And these people, they sit there and they talk about this market as if it's real, as if this is perfect. Oh, this is just, oh, of course, well, you would expect to see this in this kind of an environment, because this you can't make this stuff up. In fact, I believe that might have been the title of the video I did early today. This whole thing is fake. It's not real. How can it be real when you have central banks sitting here propping up the system? Again, this is not a free market. Free market has a buyer and a seller. This guy's willing to buy asset XYZ. This guy's willing to sell asset XYZ. They got to argue back and forth. What's the price that they're willing to come together? This is how a normal market works. This guy buys, this guy sells, this guy sells, this guy buys at whatever price. Oh, okay, I'm willing to sell my asset, but I want this. Well, I'm willing to buy your asset, but I only want to pay this. And they kind of meet in the middle. That's called price discovery. Okay. Yeah. When you have this kind of a situation where you have a third party, which is the elephant in the room, the central bank pumping, and central banks collectively pumping the system full of more liquidity because it's completely liquid. Oh yeah, how about that? The system is fully liquefied. The liquidity is good. That's what Janet Yellen said. I thought she was talking about her diaper, that the liquidity is good down there. But when you have this elephant in the room, this third party manipulating everything, how can there be a price discovery at all? Guess what, people? There can't be. So that's where you have these monumental, the distortions that exist today in the markets, if you want to even call them markets. I don't even know what they are. They're not markets at all anymore. But these distortions are beyond me. And as you can probably tell, I think I know about this market. It's all I do is I study it. It's just out of control. It doesn't make sense to me. If it doesn't make sense to me, I can't believe it makes sense to many other people in this world. But it makes a lot of sense to the commentators on CNBC and Bloomberg and Fox. Oh, they're all right. Perfect by them.
Yeah. I think that's a perfect time for us to finish up here. And I think the message that people should take away with them today is get your cash out of the bank now before it's no longer there. Make sure you convert some of that into safe assets that will hedge the problems that we're seeing. Thank you again, Greg. This has been an incredible conversation. I think people are going to take a lot away from this. And it's certainly going to put a lot of people's minds at rest as to what they've been hearing from you and from me. And hopefully they can act upon it before it's too late. So thank you very much again, Greg. This has been absolutely brilliant. I always appreciate you coming on. And hopefully we can talk again soon. And hopefully we can keep on track with what's going on.
Let's do it. Let's get more people to see what's going on. Please, people, share this stuff. Get it out there. Let people hear this, because you're not going to find it anywhere else.
That's fantastic. Well, you take care, Greg. Keep in touch. And hopefully next time we talk, we can see exactly what's going on and really put everything in perspective. That's fantastic. Thank you very much again, Greg. It's been a pleasure.
Take care now.
Cheers. Bye now.